Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 108. I am your host, Barney Smith of storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the amazingly talented children's book author, P Loundy. And you go by Peyton, right? Could I call you Peyton, or is that?
Yes, Peyton.
Okay.
Peyton's my middle name, but I go by Peyton.
Okay, all right, good. So you just published a book that came out in the end of August. I think it was August 21st.
Yes.
And it was The Monster Treaty of the In-Betweeny.
Yes.
Is that okay? And I got to tell you, looking at, it's available on Target. It's available on Amazon. You can find it basically anywhere you can find books. And looking at the reviews on this, I mean, you've already have reviews already on Amazon, and people are raving about this book.
Yeah, I've been very excited. It's been well received so far.
We'll talk a bit about the inspiration, kind of like the synopsis of the book as we further into the show. But do you just want to kind of give people a little bit of background on how you got into writing children's books?
Sure. So I have been a writer for a long time. Pretty much as long as I was alive, I've been a writer. It started with my grandmother and I. So we would sit down. She would give me coffee against my mother's wishes. She would give me coffee. And we would just tell each other stories and just try to see who could make up the bigger lie that was kind of like half passable.
Right.
And so that's kind of where it started. But ever since then, I've just kind of been a storyteller, I guess. But little bit of a writer. Storytelling is much easier than writing it out. And I even entered some contests when I was a child, and I won them for writing. And just really, it just has always been something that I've done and been passionate about.
Right. And has it always been like children's books, or have you done other types of writing before as well?
I dipped my toe into fantasy football writing. I'm not going to plug that book. It was not good. It was like a passion project, but that was my first book, was a how-to about fantasy football to kind of get beginners into it, really geared toward females, to get more females and women, girls into fantasy football. But a lot of it was children's writing. Not all of it, but a lot of it was more children.
Okay. And so and you have 2 children now, and
yes.
So I gotta say that did it kind of help to kind of have like that audience then, and you kind of said like I'm gonna write children's books. And how much of an inspiration was your own children for your first book here, The Monster Treaty of In-Betweeny?
So for The Monster Treaty of In-Betweeny, 100%. That was from my daughter, Betsy. I have some other work, which actually I'm working on publishing as well, that was kind of pre-Betsy. But I think that as an author, for me, I feel like my writing was better after I had children, because you really are gearing it to an audience, as opposed to just writing and kind of having that audience out there. You're really speaking to someone. And I think that really makes a difference. And I felt like it made my writing a lot better, actually. So they have the shout out in the book. The book is for my daughter, Kara, and my daughter, Betsy. And they had a lot of influence on it. That's their favorite page too. They love that page.
and so you wrote the book. So talk to us about, because we have authors that will listen to the podcast and kind of get some inspiration and advice. What were some of the things that you kind of discovered upon the journey of writing your first script? Because looking at your blog post that's on, if you go to kppages.com, you're talking about like you kind of like drafted it out first around January, right?
Yeah, so it was actually before that. So probably in maybe October of 2020 is kind of when I wrote it. It was completely a bedtime story. My daughter was tired. She was frustrated. She wanted a story. And so this is kind of one that I just told her at night. It was not nearly as good and as polished as this is that I'm presenting to the world. But after I told her the story, she was asleep, and I was like, you know what, that has something to it. And immediately the title is what really sold it for me, because it was just kind of the hook for the book. And after that, I kind of wrote it and I kind of put it on the back burner. I hadn't really published any of my work, really published or pursued it. But I mean, thanks to COVID, I mean, one of the silver linings is I had more time to be able to pursue this. And so that was when I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do it. It's really about being a little bit brave to put your book out there, and it's a big deal. So if you're thinking of writing and you do it, like, kudos to you. It's a lot to take on, but it's really worthwhile.
And so what did you do once you kind of wrote the first draft? How did you get it kind of proofread, or how did you find people online, or did you check it with friends and family? How did that work?
So I started with friends and family. Okay. My mom is my harshest critic. She'll tear it up. So I definitely let her read it. And she's very well read. And so it was wonderful to have her feedback. She gave me some feedback. And one of the best things is that I did kind of leave it on the shelf for a while, because I wrote it, left it, came back to it after about 3 months or so. And I fresh eyes. I had my mom read it. I had some notes. I had a few other family members and friends read it. And after that, I rewrote it. And then at that point, I felt, you know what, I can't, there's not much else I can do. Right. So I found an editor online, and I got really fortunate to stumble into this group on Facebook. It's a children's writers and illustrators group. Okay. And one of the editors had posted on there her services, and I was really excited to try to get it out there, and she seemed excited about it too, which was really nice. And she gave me a sample edit to make me feel more comfortable, because it's a big deal giving your work to somebody else. And it just went from there. She did a wonderful job. And I'll tell you, the original story was about 175 words, and I'm at 750 now. So it definitely grew throughout the process. So it was a big process.
So compared to other forms of writing, what are some of the standards that you kind of learned or that have to happen in a children's book? Is it, like you said, word count? Is there page count? How does that work?
So a standard children's book is 32 pages. They really want you to kind of stay in that kind of happy place. 750 is kind of at the end, I would say, about how long you want a children's book. 1,000 is pretty much the cut off. After that, you're no longer a picture book. You're starting to get into middle grade, kind of chapter book territory. Right. So that was something that I learned. 175 was actually very low. So at that point, you're more of a board book. And right. So that was something that I was not aware of at all. These standards that you have between what's kind of the norm and what's acceptable for different things, as far as page count and as far as word count.
Right. And where did you find, so you kind of had an editor, you were able to find an editor through a really good Facebook group. Yeah. And what were some of the things that she responded to what were some of the ones that you weren't surprised with? And my follow-up question is, what were some things that you were surprised with her feedback?
I'm going to start with surprised with, because it's tough getting that feedback. You send it out, and it's your little baby book, right. You've raised it, you've nurtured it. And so I sent it off, and it was just came back full of red, the red marks from the editor and all these notes. And I read it, and I just shut my computer. I read the feedback, and I was like, nope, going to put that away for a minute. And it was hard. It was really, really hard to get that feedback, because you care about what you're doing, and you feel like what you're doing is usually pretty good. And then you send it off to the editor, and it's usually you're not done. So that was what was shocking to me, is how much feedback and how it was not all pleasant at all. It was not. It was rough. But some things that I was not surprised by is that she did think that there was something there. Like I felt it whenever I wrote it, and whenever I was like experiencing it through the writing, I was like, there's something here. Like I feel like this is something that maybe will resonate with kids, will resonate with parents. It was just different enough to where I didn't feel like it's something that had been done a million times. So I was really, it gave me a lot of confidence that she kind of agreed with that. And I was very happy with that. Not so happy with all the red, but the underlying, hey, you have something here that was nice.
Right. And what were some of the things that stuck out for you that because I'm presuming, looking at your website, that it says that you actually have a list of view all products, so find new releases. So I'm making a safe assumption that you're going to be making more books, correct?
Yes, I actually have one being edited now, and so
wow.
It's in process. It's going to come out. I already have my Illustrator lined up. I'm going to use the same Illustrator, which I like. There's some continuity between the books.
Right.
And I did have to use a different editor, but my original editor recommended someone else, because that's another thing you have to learn is there's a lot of editors that are specialized.
Okay.
And she was really specialized in picture books. And so my next book is starting to get into, I'm calling it an expanded picture book, but it's close to middle grade. It kind of falls in between the cracks of those expected word counts.
Okay.
So she recommended someone else, but I'm excited. It's definitely in process.
So what were some of the things that you learned from your first editor that you were able to kind of nip when you worked on your second book?
Definitely the layout of a children's story is really no different than a novel. You really have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you really have to set up conflict. And that's not something that I really kind of thought about whenever I was first writing is having conflict in a children's story. But you really need it in order for that to be a good, solid, like full-bodied story. You need conflict in it. It doesn't have to be something terrible. It just has to be something that someone approaches and is a problem.
Right.
And they recommend 3 problems. I felt like that was a very proverb type of way to tell a story, but they really recommend the 3 problems that someone kind of gets over. And they said that that's really a backbone of a good story, or a technically good story. Yeah, that was really interesting to me.
So what would be an example of that offhand,
So in the story, my parents, when they go to the world of the monster world through the door in between, they meet the monsters. And that was something she had a lot of comments on, is in the original story, that conflict wasn't built up, because to me, as a mom telling a child a story, it's not really important for them to understand that there's a conflict and there's tension there. But what my editor described is that it's good to have the tension there, because it draws the reader in. And then whenever there's a resolution, it's more meaningful. So instead of just having, the parents saw the monsters and they started talking, I really drew it out. Like I'm talking about how, the silence was so loud you could hear a dropped pin. You never knew when that silence would end. It really builds up the tension, as opposed to just saying, oh yeah, hey, monsters. So that was something that was really interesting to me.
Okay. Wow. And so when you talked about, when you talked, so kind of tell us a bit about that. Tell us a bit about what the readers can expect from the book.
So the interesting thing I think about the story is instead of it being a child, or from a child's point of view, it really features the parents.
Okay.
And that's something that's different. Actually, I got a lot of pushback on that, pushed through it, and I kept it the way that I had originally imagined. But to me, I thought it was important. The book is about a child who has a fear of monsters at night. In the beginning, this is set at a different time. There are monsters everywhere. They're popping up. They're scaring kids. Kids aren't sleeping. Parents are frustrated. And so typically, a lot of the times, a child or a monster will kind of take the point of view, or that will be the main character. But in this instance, I want it to be the parents. So the parents end up catching a monster unaware. They chase it to a door in between, and then they find the monster land. And then they have to talk to the monsters in order to find kind of a compromise to where the monsters can exist, but also the children can exist, and everyone's very happy and comfortable. And the reason I did it with the parents first as opposed to the child is, for me, I know with my daughter, she wanted my comfort and she wanted me, to figure out the solution. And I think that that's fine for kids sometime. I don't think that kids always have to have the answers or should.
Right.
So that was really why I wanted it to be like very parent forward, so that parents can give that comfort to their kids and say, yeah, we got it covered. You don't have to worry about monsters.
And what were some of the other lessons that you wanted the readers to take away from the book as well?
So another aspect of it is whenever the parents kind of confront the monsters, the monsters aren't mean. The monsters were all very sorry and sad, because even monsters know scaring is bad. That they weren't intending to hurt the kids. They were not intending to scare the children, but they just wanted to play a game, hide and seek, and they just were not very good at it. So kids kept finding them. So I really try to make it to where, there isn't any kind of black and white. There's not any mean, bad versus good. Like, it's just a misunderstanding that you can kind of talk through. And that's what the parents did. They asked for their suggestion. Like, they didn't tell the monsters what was going to happen. They asked for their suggestion on how to handle a problem that involved everybody. And it was actually the monsters who figured out that they would have to make a change, and they would create a new monster law, a new monster treaty. And that would create this space to where monsters, like I said, and children can kind of coexist, but they're separate, and there's no fear, and everyone was happy in the end. Spoiler alert. It's all good.
Was there anything that you got from people who've read the book, who've given you feedback, or anything that on there that there were things that they interpreted about the book that you're surprised about?
I will say that even though the kindness and kind of like everyone kind of not being mean and talking through problems, while that was something that was kind of like that's something I intended, really that's what a lot of people are taking away from it. I've been pretty surprised by that. A lot of people have picked up on it. And so that's kind of nice. And it's also kind of surprising. But if that's what everyone's seeing, maybe there's a need for more of that in children's literature. So that's kind of exciting. And it's just mind blowing. It kind of blows me away.
And so, yeah, because, looking at some of the reviews, people are talking about how it was so good that they're able to find a book that's about conflict resolution. And because they really don't see a lot of books about this, it's, and where do you, and another, and it's just, it's another, I don't want to say a fad, but another thing that I see that's more prevalent in children's books now, and you kind of have it on your website as well, is accompanied activity sheets, or accompanied like learning, like teaching lessons that would come with that. Is there, because I do see you have some activity sheets, is there anything where talking to some of your colleagues and friends to say, hey, maybe we can make a teaching lesson with this as well? Has there been talks about that too?
There has, and it's definitely, you're completely right on the money. It really has transitioned to where a lot of children's books lately do have some sort of teaching element. And especially I would say with self-published authors, I feel like that's super big, because they really want a way to make their book stand out, but also make it very relevant. Because whenever you are self-published, that's some things that you really are going to struggle with. You want to be relevant, but because you don't have a big name behind you, why does what you say matter? So putting these activity sheets with it and things like that, and giving a teaching aspect, it really does make it more valid, I guess. But any book is valid, but more valuable, I guess, to the reader. So yeah, that's definitely true. And I've been working on that. I do have some more worksheets myself. I haven't published them yet. That's a good way to get me going on that. But yeah, that's definitely something that is very common right now.
Right. And so you did mention that you have another book that's out to the publish, like that you have to an editor. Is this kind of from a world building perspective? Is it connected to the Monsterland and stuff?
It's not. I think in the future, I think maybe I would revisit In-Betweeny. I think that's kind of fun, an in-between world. But this new project is actually kind of my passion project.
Okay.
So it's really important to me. And I was too afraid to make it my first book because, like I said, it does mean a lot to me, but it's a collection of fairy tales. And so that's kind of the vein that it'll be in. It's a bunch of kind of fairy tales. And it is about talking to kids like they can understand what's going on. And it is definitely about lessons, but I'm not dumbing anything down. I don't know if I can say that. Sorry. But I really want it to be for young kids, but I'm not even sure how to explain it, to be honest, but in a way that's like more worldly, I guess.
Okay.
And like it makes more sense. Like I don't know. It's hard for me to talk about it because it's a new project, but it's also something that I'm really passionate about. So it kind of makes me stumble because I don't want to say the wrong thing about it.
Right.
But I'm really excited about it also.
Are you kind of nervous since it's such a passion project about what your editor's going to come back with?
I'm terrified. I'm terrified. Totally terrified. And it's like I said, and it's kind of in between too for the word links. It doesn't match up.
Right.
So it's going to be a whole new thing, I think. And it's not anything crazy. The first book, I'll tell you so that your readers and your listeners will be the first to know. It's called The Boy and the Ogre.
Oh, okay.
And I'm really excited about it. But and that's the common theme. Everything's this and that is the thing with all the stories. But yeah, I am nervous about it completely.
And so because of that, because you brought it up, because it might be considered a long picture book or a chapter book, does that mean from just a layout perspective that it needs less intensive illustrations because of that? Or how would that look?
So with the word count, with the picture books, you really want to stick to that 32 page. And so if you're on a certain word count, once you get over 500 into 750 words, you're starting to scrunch up your words on your pages. There was one spread in my book to where it was pretty wordy, and I made sure to present that as a spread. So you're getting a really nice visual with all that word content. But whenever you start getting into these other word links and different links, it's kind of what is standard. I think that that's one thing that's really exciting with self-publishing is I think that some of those standards are going to change. And for example, one of my books is right at 4,000 words. And so it would not be considered a picture book. But one of my favorite picture books is Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And that actually is around 4,000 words. So it really broke the norm. But at the same time, it was very successful. And it was that gap between being a picture book, but also having a more mature message that young children could still relate to. So that's really kind of that avenue that I really want to tap into.
Right. And so with that said, because you said you're going to stick with Lucy is going to illustrate this for you as well. And because you're self-published through, check it out at kppages.com, you can see all that did you also then have to do the layout design and everything for your book as well? Or did you hire someone for that?
I hired somebody. I have an amazing designer and formatter, and she did some of the design. So I had an idea about how I'd like it to look. It wasn't finished, but I did kind of have the pacing, and I did have kind of the page layout in my mind. But I'll tell you, once she got a hold of it, it just really elevated it, what it was. She even did a little bit of like tweaking to the illustrations, which was wonderful to work with her and my illustrator at the same time. And that was really beneficial to the book. But I couldn't do that. No, it's crazy how much goes into publishing a book. Like I wrote it, and I think that there's some value into that work, but I also had an illustrator, I had a designer, and I had a formatter, I had an editor. I had considered going to another editor for my my back copy. So for the back blurb, I had another editor look at that was separate. And so it's a lot of help that I had, and I'm very appreciative of, but it's something that I did not expect and understand when I first got into publishing. I thought it'd be so much easier. Let's be easy peasy, just push it out. But it's a lot of work.
Right. Hey folks, I just wanted to take a quick break and say thank you so much for listening and watching Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. If you can, please subscribe. If you can, hit the like button. Go ahead and leave a review on your favorite podcast app that you might be listening to this on. And remember, always, always support local artists, support local writers, support independent creators. It sure does mean a lot to them. And we will be here at Storycomic to make sure that their voices are being heard. Thank you. So, as you said earlier, you had a Facebook group. That's kind of where you kind of found the editor. Where did you find the illustrator? Where did you find Lucy?
So I found Lucy on Fiverr. And I think that there are a lot of people that are very talented on Fiverr. And I also think that it's a very, very good resource for people who are self-publishing, because you can find people that are easier to work with on a budget. I was very shocked when I first started pricing out illustrations. It was anywhere between, $5 a page up to $1,500 a page.
Wow.
Like, there is a crazy discrepancy between what the highs and what the lows were. And so once I realized it was like $1,000 a page, I had to rethink everything, because I was like, yeah, that's definitely not something I can afford. So I checked on Fiverr, and I honestly looked out. She had not done many published works. A lot of what she was doing was characters at the time. And she didn't have a huge portfolio, but she had excellent reviews for what she did. And that's what stood out to me. Her reviews were amazing. I think that she had like 100 5-star reviews. Wow. And when I started working with her, I asked for a sample, which I'll recommend to anyone. Always get the sample first. Don't get into a contract. Get sample work to see how your fit is. But what she turned out was amazing. I loved it. The parents were the first sketch that she did for me, and it just seemed like a fit, and it seemed like it was going to work out. And so we just went for it, and she did a great job.
And did you know enough to say, I wanted it like as a certain style, or did you say, hey, I want to? So talk to us about that then, the contracting piece. So how does that work? So did Lucy have to send you like physical copies, or this was all digital that she sent you, or how did that work?
So with Fiverr, it's very user friendly, and it's very author friendly, I'll be frank, because the copyright completely goes to you once the work is completed. Okay. So whenever you're working with another illustrator, if you're going to do like a hand-drawn contract, a lot of times you'll have to negotiate for after-use rights, or for, line work rights or anything like that. With working through Fiverr, everything was mine, and it was very easy. We had an implied contract pretty much through Fiverr, just because of the nature of the business is you pay for something, you own it. Right. And so that made it very, very easy. In the future, when I work with Lucy, I definitely want to include her more on doing some kind of aftermarket stuff. I do have some stuff that I'm working on and have finished with the Monster Treaty of Betweeny. But I think that going through it, I think that Fiverr takes a lot of money from the illustrator, to be frank. So it's good. It's a really good resource for people that are on a budget. And it's a really good resource for people that aren't on a budget. Like, Lucy's amazing. I couldn't believe that I found her. And she is so talented. And I think that now she's going to start her own portfolio and start working just as an illustrator instead of more of a freelancer through Fiverr. So I'm super proud of her for that, and super excited for her. But it's kind of a building block for a lot of illustrators. Okay.
So you got the editor done. You had that manuscript. You found the illustrator through Fiverr.
Yep. So
talk to us about, after that happened, did you kind of shop around and figure out, okay, how am I going to get this published? What were some of the steps you found in nailing down Ingram Spark for you?
So I will say I sent off my manuscript to agents. I was rejected a lot. I think that by the end of it, I was up to maybe 32 rejections. But I'll say also, when I started, is I did not send out my best work. Some of the first stuff I was querying, to agents, was whenever my story was about 350 words. Right. The finished product is now at 750. So it's super important, if you're going to query, I'll say, to have a finished, polished piece of work, and it's edited. Like, it's super important. It's possible that an agent would have picked me up if I would have done things a little bit more correctly, I would guess, just having it edited. But I did send it out. I did get rejected. That was a blow. And then I started kind of looking around and doing my research about how I could go about self-publishing it. And originally I had not expected to have all this work to do, because if you are traditionally published, they do the illustrations, they do some of the editing, they do some of the design. But I was about halfway through my illustrations just because I wanted to do it, because I wanted to see it put pen to paper and kind of have that visual representation. But once I got to the point where I was getting rejected and I just really felt like I was right and they were wrong and I was going to put this out there, I started looking at self-publishing options. And the biggest ones are either KDP, which is Amazon, Kindle Direct Publishing, or Ingram Spark. Those were the two biggest ones that I could see. There's also some other ones, Lulu, I think, Book Baby. Those are some options. What sold it to me for Ingram, though, is it has expanded distribution. So if you're interested in getting some of the bigger retailers like Target or Barnes & Noble or Books A Million, they are someone that they would like to source from. So you're going to be more likely to get into a store like that as a self-publisher if you use someone that is a distributor for big bookstores.
Right.
And so that's why I picked them.
And so with that is that, so if someone goes to, going on your website, is this connected straight to, would they be getting this from Ingram Spark, or would they be buying this like you have a stack of books at your house right now?
So these would be from me, primarily on my website. If you look on there, the main reason I set it up that way is for the author's bundle. A lot of people had asked for signed copies.
Right.
And that was a way to give them a signed copy. So if you get the author's bundle on it's coming from me, but you get the signed copy, you get like stickers, I have bookmarks, I have coloring pages. Working on some other stuff. We might have some plushies soon, some little baby monsters. But that's kind of the only purpose. If you're on my site, you're getting a signed copy pretty much.
Right.
If you first go onto my site, the first thing that usually comes up is like a pop-up, and that does link to Amazon. But that's just when you first open it. I don't think it hangs around.
Right.
But yeah, those are from me, but also you can buy from Amazon, and Amazon is who did my distribution for my paperback, because their pricing was the most competitive for paperback publishing. And so that's why I went with KDP. So I have like 3 different ways to get it. You get the hardback through Ingram Spark, and they distribute to pretty much anyone outside of me. They distribute to Amazon, actually. If you buy a hardback through Amazon, you're actually purchasing it through Ingram Spark, who is using it as a wholesale to Amazon. So paperback is Amazon, Ingram is hardback, and you are purchasing just copies that I have on my dining room table right now if you purchase from my website.
And because, like you said, you had a great release. It was #1 in children's and parents books. So you made.
Yep.
So people will be listening or watching, and be questions like, how did you do that? Did you do marketing, or how did people hear about your book?
So if you're listening to this podcast for tips and tricks, this is it. Like, this is the moment that you get tips and tricks. You have to really, if you want a #1, it's very competitive. You're a self-publisher, and most self-publishers don't have the big people behind them. If you do a Kickstarter, sometimes you can build up a good launch team.
Right.
For me, I didn't do a Kickstarter. I did not have a launch team. I was too afraid. I was like, oh gosh, what are they going to say? So I didn't do a launch team. But if you're strategic in your categories, it's much easier to get a #1 new release. You still have to do the work. Like, people bought my book. I was shocked by how many people bought my book. But what really helps get that #1 is to be strategic in the categories. And you have to be honest. Like, don't put your category in green car racing on #5 cars. If you're writing about teddy bears, that's not it's a little disingenuous. But for me, it was a children and parenting book, because the parentings are, parenting is parenting forward in the story. But it's a smaller niche category. And so I had less competition in that category. You kind of just have to play around with it too. It's something that I found out through I do a lot of YouTube to try to figure out what I'm doing wrong through publishing. And that's one of the things I came up with is if you want a number one, it's really about the categories, because it's so hard just to get a number one book or even a top 100 book in general, just in books, because Amazon has quadruple million books. Yeah. So it's crazy. It's very competitive. And children's book in particular are actually extremely, extremely competitive. I had no idea.
Wow. And well, I think the challenge is too, as you're mentioning, is like it's at first blush, people read children's books and like, okay, how complicated is this? But then you realize that like adult authors who write 500-page books is like, I could never write a children's book. Like, it's so complicated.
Yes, because you have to compress and compress and compress like something that is it's a whole story. It's a novel in 1,000 words or less. And that's the thing. Right.
And you have to write it in a way that is accessible to children. So it's extremely complicated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you did brought it up earlier. Would that be something now that you kind of you dipped your toes in your water, you got your first successfully published book? Would you look at taking your other books in the future by doing it through a crowdfunding source like Indiegogo or Kickstarter?
So for me, I would say no, just because it's so intimidating. Like it's not that it's like easy and I'm like, oh no, I'm fine. Like this is hard work. And I cashed out a CD that I'd had since I was 18 to publish this book. So it's hard, but there's a lot of bravery that goes into writing. And one of the things that people are very brave about is doing a Kickstarter, because you really have to put it out there. You have a certain amount that you have to hit.
Right.
And if you don't hit it, then you get nothing.
Right.
And it's hard. I know that there's, in my group in particular, the Facebook group that I've had a lot of success with, and I've had a lot of, met a lot of different people and got a lot of help from. There's people in there that have had very successful Kickstarters, multiple successful Kickstarters. And that's kind of how they build their book, how they build their audience. And they have amazing audiences. Like there's people in there that have sold tens of thousands of books as a self-published author. And a lot of those people did do a Kickstarter. For me, it's just so intimidating, to be honest. It's just intimidating. So probably not. It's not something I'll shut the door on, but you have to be brave to do one of those. And I expended a lot of bravery just getting this out. I was like, oh, that's it. So maybe in the future though.
But it worked. I mean,
I guess so. Yeah, that's true.
You got a #1 new release in children's. I mean, you did it. So
yeah.
I mean, there's that bravery, but then also you got to be a level of self-confidence that you've earned yourself to do this already.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of self-publishers too have to overcome too. There used to be a huge stigma with self-publishing versus traditional publishing, and I'm so excited about it. Honestly, not even as an author or as a writer, like even as a reader and as a parent, like just being exposed to some of these different things that normally wouldn't pass through a traditional publisher. You're getting so many more books about diversity and about different concepts and different things, like from different cultural, religious standards and things like that. And it's really expanding, what's out there and, what's available. So it's really exciting. But for self-publishers, I get it. Like there's a lot of, kind of that self-doubt, and it's so hard, and you have to really learn it almost by yourself, so it's just a big hurdle. And so, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of a confidence issue. It's growing though. I saw my book on Target, and that was it for me. I was pretty excited. Like, get me a Starbucks and let's go to Target and buy a book. It's very exciting.
That's right. You can go to the Target website and buy your book right there.
Yeah,
The Monster exciting. Treaty of Betweeny right there. And you can save 5% if you use your red card
every day. Right, yeah, the red card. There you
go. So you said like you have you have another book that's kind of not really that's, you say, kind of like a chapter book. You must have. I mean, now that you're just kind of sitting on this right now with this success, which is, like I said, less than a month old. This book came out in late August. So and so yeah, about a month old that the book is. I can't believe it's late September already. Yeah, it's been fun.
Flies by.
Do you see yourself then, like, is there how many ideas do you have listed? Because you already said you already have one that's already out to the editor. Are you scripting something else now?
So for the books that I was talking about, kind of like that bridge gap in between picture book and middle grade, I have 7 of those actually already written.
Okay.
And so this is the one that I know it's crazy. And then this is the one I felt was the easiest, I guess, to get out. I felt like it had the least amount of like tweaking and editing. I felt like it was like the least controversial at all from all the books. And so this is the one I'm going with, The Boy and the Ogre. And it's really funny. And it's a really fun book. I have 7 of those, but currently I'm working on a young adult book, which is also a fairy tale, and it does exist in the same universe as my original picture books. So what I would like is I even have a board book written that is in the same universe. And so kind of a books that kind of grow with kids. Right. And so you can have that kind of familiar feeling of like this picture book, and then you read, something that's like a chapter book, or maybe even a young adult, because it's kind of it's kind of another in between middle grade and young adult. So it kind of grows with the kids, but everything exists in the same universe. And I want to add Easter eggs from it's a lot.
Right. Yeah. I love that idea.
But so now I am doing something a little different, and I am actively working on it, and really excited about it.
So Jennifer Roberts says that she bought the book and she's excited to read it with my class. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, seriously? Oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that was going to be my other question, is like, do you see that kind of like with your daughters kind of growing up to kind of follow it along to the point where you do have like the board books to the picture books to the chapter books to the young adult books? So you see that as the whole, they can kind of follow it along. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, whenever I was writing these, it's, as a parent, and I know that you're a parent also, you see these, these kids, these random kids, I guess, these kids growing up, and it's just so amazing, what's happening before your very eyes. And so you kind of want to like capture lightning in a bottle, and so a lot of that love and a lot of that emotion that I feel with them, it was really cool to write the book, because whenever I have the book now, I have a lot of those memories, of reading this story and making up this story with her. And so I hope it's something that she gets to keep and to cherish, for her and for me, as she gets older. And so I'm really excited from that aspect, just to have something between us, and it's something that's tangible that we get to keep. It's really sweet.
Right. Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
Do you see, is there a point where she's going to like try to help you write? And she's a budding author now too. Has she got some stories she wants to?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. She wrote her own monster story. Whenever I was going to donate a book to her class, she's like, we could donate mine, Mom. It's fine. Like I have mine. And so she took her little book up there and she said, this is my book. Don't worry, Mom. But yeah, she definitely is. She's really excited about it. I was tickled that she was really excited about it. And so sometimes she'll go, Mommy, it's my story time. And so she'll go write her own stories now. And it's very sweet. It's exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting to the top of the hour, Peyton. So I gotta say, like I said, congratulations on the release of your book. That's fantastic that you're able to do that. Very excited for the Boy and the Ogre. Is that what you said?
Yeah, The Boy and the Ogre. So It's listed, if you go up to books, it is listed as a coming soon. So really? I just added that actually. So there it is.
Okay. All right. So you update this. That's coming August 2021. So
I need to update that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. So when can your readers expect? You said The Boy, is that 2022 then?
Yeah, I would say 2022. I'm kind of hoping for summer 2022, but we'll see. These things take much longer than you ever expect. So it's a shocker.
Congrats. Yeah, great. So you got to come back on when you talk about The Boy and the Ogre then too.
I would love to. That'd be great.
Yeah. All right. Well, then once again, thank you very much, Peyton. This has been fantastic. And And I'm gonna have to get this too because my my daughter came on before the show looking at the book. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that would be wonderful. You can send me your address and I'll send her some fun little monster swag. That'd be great.
Perfect. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Is this like your writing studio now? Is this like
This is my husband's office. I have my own office, but he has a much nicer setup with the mic, with the video camera and all that. His setup's much nicer than mine. I have a Chromebook. Like that's my writing. So I didn't want to do this with a Chromebook. It would have been as successful, I'm sure.
So is that what you're like saying? So, oh, I got to do an interview. I got to make sure I got everything set up right. And
yeah. So I was like, okay, I have an interview. He's like, what does that mean? I was like, I'm really not sure. So we just came in here kind of, and I was like, I just need your camera. And so he set it up for me.
Okay, cool. Yeah. What a good husband. That's good.
Yeah, he did a good job.
Yeah.